What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Out Loud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud. This is episode 100. We have made it 100 episodes. That is absolutely wild to me. I didn't believe that I would make 20 episodes, and then I didn't believe I would make 40, 50. And here we are at 100, and it's insane. Been doing this thing for a very, very long time. And it's just wild to me. It's wild the stories that we've heard. It's wild the experiences that we've shared, the highs and the lows, the victories, the defeats, all of them. I am so grateful to have this podcast. I am so grateful to have this platform where I can share people's experiences and share my own experience with other people so that we can all recover together and maybe something helps you along the way. And I'm really grateful for that. This episode is going to be another update or sharing of my story. I did a small little snippet of an update when I was not recording or uploading content, and that's not indicative of how I'm living my life now. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing, and we're going to get into that. So I'm going to share my story, unfiltered, unedited, all that stuff. You know how we do here. We love to keep it raw. We love to keep it upfront and personal, emotions attached to it. And that's okay because that makes the human experience that much better. So my name is Sean Young. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And for me, that means that I have not had a mind-altering substance in 5 years, 6 months, and 17 days. That is wild. And because of that, I am able to be a better person, a better friend, a better father, a better brother, better son, and a better contributing member to society. Where we left off a long time ago in episode 1. Shit, it has been a long time. Episode 1 was the last time I shared my story. Episode 1, we had just started the journey. I believe that it was 2022, maybe 2021. No, it was 2022 because I started it early 2022. I was living in Alaska, and I was going through some mental health challenges, and life was lifing, and it was kicking me in the butt. And I felt that this was an outlet for me to share my experience, strength, and hope with people, and maybe help somebody along the way. And I don't feel any different than that. But now my life has changed significantly. So picking up where we left off, I lived in Alaska. I fought real hard, as all my guests know. Everybody knows I'm a veteran, and when I initially filed my claim through the VA, it was for traumatic brain injury, and so that really affects like the cognitive processing and the functioning of my brain. And when I initially filed it, it was for traumatic brain injury. And through going to counseling and through actually working through counseling, I picked up two more diagnoses that were more severe than traumatic brain injury, and that was post traumatic stress um, with massive depressive and alcohol use syndrome, which is all diagnosable in the DSM-5. And so I took that to the VA and I filed it with the VA and I filed a claim to be reassessed through the VA for my rating. And eventually I would get my 100% disability permanent and total, or total and permanent. And so that was awesome because not only was the VA recognizing that my PTSD was severe and my depression was severe, and that I would have to work every single day at my recovery, but also it helped put more money in my pocket through the VA. So if you are a veteran and you're listening to this, and your symptoms are severe, or you've been picked up for another handful of diagnosis, make sure you get that stuff turned into the VA, especially if you're seeing an outside provider. It's important. It really is because it can help your overall rating. And so I did that, and life started getting kind of crazy. Life started skyrocketing. I worked for a mental health clinic that specialized in peer support, and I was peer support certified. I still am, and it it changed the way that I looked at the world. Um, I found many phases in my life where I've changed the way that I work or that I look at the world, and that was one of the other ways because I've never worked with a homeless population before, and at the time I was. This was in the midst of the pandemic, and they were scooping people up off the street in Alaska and putting them in homeless shelters because it was so cold. And so I got to work with some of the homeless population up there and really connect with some people that just had shitty circumstances, whether they went homeless because of the economy or being laid off from their job or divorce, what have you. Addiction, that's a huge one. They were put in uncanny situations where they couldn't win, and I was glad to be there and be able to help assist, and I worked with some good people that, have been on the show, like Brian Belcher. I've worked with him. I worked with, Jason Hofstetter. I believe he's been on the show. If not, we're gonna get him on. But life was awesome. I really enjoyed it. But that company went under. No fault of my own or the peers. It just went out under, and some things happened, and so I found myself jobless again. And it was a rough transition because I had just gotten into the peer work, right, and I just got to a point where I was like feeling comfortable with working with other people because prior to that I hadn't had a job for a while, and so I applied to a bunch of different places and I just got turned down. And life got really, really a bit tumultuous really quick. I didn't have that additional source of income coming in, so like the financial portion when you start to get in financial binds, it gets really rough. And so the financial portion of that really started to kick me in the butt. But I stayed sober through it, and that was important to me. My recovery, my sobriety is very important to me. And so I stayed sober during that. And you guys know that I used to work with the AKTCA, the Alaska Therapeutic Court Alumni Program, and I was a facilitator with that. I had the opportunity to go to Nashville, Tennessee, to join in the Rise 22 conference, which All Rise focuses on therapeutic courts and how to help people that are in active addiction or mental health disorders or criminally involved, where they are able to get into recovery services to get those services. So we got there's judges from all across the country, probation officers, parole officers, uh, county clerks, you name it, district attorneys, peers like myself, graduates, alumni. It was amazing. It was one of the best events that I have ever been to. And the cool thing is, like, not just that, I got to meet some celebrities that are in recovery. I got to see the Warren Treaty. If you listen to country music, Warren Treaty is amazing. Got to see them. Got to see Leslie Nel or not Leslie Nelson. Can't remember his name. Anyways, he ended up dying later that year. But I got to see him. I'll have to look his name up real quick. Um, but I got to see one of his last performances, and it was great. Um, and Leslie Jordan, that's who it was. Leslie Jordan. We got to see Leslie Jordan's one of his last performances, which was great. And I got to meet some other celebrities and do a method acting class at the end of it, and it was just really cool, man. I had an absolute blast at the conference, but there was something that was happening in the background, that on my social media some people might have seen. But my daughter lived at Fort Campbell, and well, not at Fort Campbell, but in Clarksville, Tennessee, and that's like an hour away from Nashville. And so I got into contact with her mom and I said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be in town, in Nashville. Would you mind if I got to see Emma a little bit and hang out with her?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And I shit you not, when I landed and checked into my hotel, they were there waiting for me, and we had dinner. And it was just a really cool bonding experience because that was the first time any of them, my daughter, her mom, her stepdad, and younger brother, got to see me sober, like, got to see the best version of me sober. I was nervous, um, because they had seen me in my active addiction and my severe mental health crises that I was in, and they hadn't seen this version of me, so I didn't know what was gonna happen. But it was great, it was great seeing them. And so Rise 22, came to an end on Friday, and I wasn't slated to leave till Sunday. So I ended up getting a ticket. I mean, you look back here, I love professional wrestling. I like WWE. That's not anything that I make that I don't vocalize on here. And we've recorded with Jesus Rodriguez or Ricardo Rodriguez, and so he's one of the other people I'd followed when I was much younger. And so SummerSlam was in Nashville that year. So I got the absolute opportunity to take my daughter to SummerSlam, her first event, and it was awesome. It was such a great bonding experience. I didn't feel any pressure. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel an urge to drink. I didn't get the social anxiety. I just had an absolute blast, and it's a core memory. That's something that she still talks about today, 3 years later, which is great. And so I flew back to Alaska, and when I got back to Alaska, things in my marriage had changed, and my at the time wife became very distant, and she became very withdrawn from the relationship. And there was things that I had seen in our relationship that I didn't like, and when I vocalized them, I was gaslit into believing that they weren't real, that I was just making it all up. And I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand how, like, I'm seeing these things and nobody else is. And it wasn't like I was looking for them, they were just in plain sight. One of the big things that really stuck with me is in my recovery, my problems are my own. Um, they're nobody else's. I don't need to ask somebody not to drink or not to smoke around me because I don't. I'm comfortable in it. I understand that people are gonna people and life is gonna life. That's my level of comfortability around it. I don't have to drink to have a good time, and I can be around it and still have a good time and not feel the urge. And when I got home, the only thing that I asked is like, "Hey," in that marriage is, "Hey, if you are going to drink, please let me know." Right? Like that's a respect for me in my recovery, and I'm respecting you by having the understanding of like, "Hey, you're going to be drinking, or If you want to have a house party and I'm not here, just let me know, right? Because like I'm accountable for this house. If something goes wrong in this house, I'm accountable for it because I lived on military basic or military housing. And I got home, everything looked normal. I went to take the trash out. And I found a ton of beer cans, alcohol bottles in my trash, and I wasn't informed that this was happening, and that upset me because that's a clear lack of respect, a clear lack of boundary, of boundaries, right? And like everything that I had set at that point had just been demolished, like stepped on. And so I went and approached her about it and said, I don't care that you had a party. I just wish you would have let me know so that I'm aware, so that I'm not surprised when I open up this this trash can and there's beer bottles and beer boxes, liquor bottles all over the place. Just a little bit of respect. It goes a long way. Well, as time progressed, we get into Halloween and I'm still doing everything. I'm still doing everything that I promised I would do, and nothing from my end of the relationship changed. I actually was working harder at rebuilding what I felt was falling apart, and just nothing was working. Nothing was working at all. The more that I stepped forward and tried to like provide time, provide space, it was just like she pulled back. She pulled back, and there wasn't anything that I can do to fix that. Come Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving was like one of the bottom of the barrels, man. And the more that I tried, she was sick. We couldn't go to her family's house for Thanksgiving. So I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for all of us, everything. I did everything. She wouldn't eat. Um, the kids ate, obviously, but she wouldn't eat. And then a week later, my whole reality at that moment came crashing down. On Wednesday, I went to go pick her up from work, and we got home. We sat in the car for a few minutes, and she said, "I'm not happy." And I said, "Okay, well, let's try to figure out how to, work around that, like get you to a point where you are happy, right? Like, what areas in your life are you not happy with?" She said, "This marriage." And I knew that all too well because I had 2 divorces at that time under my belt, and I knew what that felt. I knew how that felt from her perspective, but I also knew how it felt from mine. And so I said, "How can we fix this? How can we work on this? How can we get you to a point where you're happy?" And she said, "I don't know," and left at that. Like it left the conversation out like that. And we slept in separate rooms, not by my choice. And then the very next night, I went to go pick her up from work, and she said, "I'm not happy in this marriage. I want a separation." And I didn't understand why at all. There was no explanation given. It was just like, "Hey, this is it." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" I couldn't get it. I couldn't understand. That was on Thursday, right? Like so Wednesday the initial conversation happened. Thursday is where she said, "I'm unhappy. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore." And then Friday, I was supposed to pick her up from work. And then she said, "Oh, hey, I've got a ride home." Um, and she would normally get off work at 9, and she didn't roll into the house until like 11. So I was like, "What the fuck is happening here?" And during the day, I had wrote her a letter. Yeah, look, at that point, I started to spiral because I could not comprehend what was happening in my own relationship because there were no answers given at all. And I was trying to look for answers, and there was none given. And I was spiraling, like absolutely spiraling. And so when she got home, I handed her this letter that I wrote, and I said, "Here, read it," because that was one of the ways that we communicated was through letters, where she would leave me a nice little cute note, or I'd leave her a nice little cute note somewhere, in the car or whatever, in her bag going to work, whatever. And she read it, and she said, "There's nothing you can do to stop this." And I was like, "What the fuck does that mean?" Right? Like, how am I supposed to work through that? What? Give me something. And she said, "I have a house." And I was crushed because all these things are happening, and I don't know a damn thing about it. at all whatsoever. My reality was about to change. Everything that I knew was about to change. And she had her sister there and her sister's boyfriend, and I couldn't understand. Like, I was just fucking lost. So I went into the room and I was angry. I was angry because I kept saying, "Just talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Like, I want to know how how can I fix it?" And then I wake up the next morning to a lot of noise, and I walk out in the living room, and they're moving stuff out of the house. And I looked at her and said, "What the fuck is going on here?" And she said, "I'm moving my stuff out today." So it was in a matter of 4 days that my relationship completely crumbled. But when in reality, it had been going on for a long time, and I was not able to see it. And everything went in my brain. All the stuff. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. All the feelings that I have felt, since I was a child, literally came up in that moment, and it was just like all of these things, boom, 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 boom. And the shitty thing about it is that happened right after I got paid. So all of my money went to bills, and I was broke, absolutely fucking broke, flat broke, no means for anything. Like, I didn't have enough money to go shopping, and that was shitty. It was a shitty thing to do, and it was a shitty feeling. And when she was done moving all her stuff out, I told her, I'm just gonna stay out of your way. I'm gonna go in the office. I'm gonna stay out of your way. And when she came in, she was teary eyed, and she said, "I'll explain everything later." And I said, I would like you to. And she said, "I'll come back later on tonight. I would love you to. I'll come see you tomorrow. I would love you to." So when I left, or when she left, it absolutely crushed me. Like, I felt like I had a dagger in my heart, and it just perpetually kept turning, kept turning. I've never felt heartbreak like that before, except for when it came to my daughter. And it fucked me up hard. I went into the kitchen to grab some water and just look around because they're rummaging around in the kitchen. And I had a 12-pack of ramen to my name and a case of water, nothing else. And it wasn't even a 12-pack, it was like half of a 12-pack, so 6 packs. And I didn't know how long I had left to survive. And so in that time, I sat in the discomfort. I sat in the pain and the anguish and the heartbreak. And I was reaching out to people. I lived on my phone 24/7, whether it was going to meetings, like virtual meetings, or reaching out to a friend. Like, I barely slept. I was always on my phone talking to people. I needed that support. And that's where the coping skills come in. And that's also where leaning in your program and the saying of "work it if you work it," or "it works if you work it." That's where it came in, because we love to go to these meetings in the easy times where we're, at these points where our life is good and we don't have anything to talk about, but we don't go to these meetings when we're in fucking crisis mode. And I did. And it helped me out a lot. But I was still missing something. Like, I was so alone in a fucking house. Like, I felt I was just so alone. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I was just so fucking alone. I felt broke. And every time I would walk out of that office into the hallway, the walls would talk to me. And I could see the memories we created in the house, the good and the bad ones. I could hear the words that were spoken, the good and the bad ones. Like, it was just this, I felt like it was a psychosis. Like, I was going into actual psychosis because I couldn't understand what was happening to me. And I looked at it as a curse. I was like, fuck, I cannot maintain a relationship, a romantic relationship. Nobody fucking loves me. Nobody cares, but I didn't drink. And I'm so goddamn proud of myself. And I reached out to one of my friends, and I called him every day. And most of the people that I talk to every single day. And one of my friends, his name is Sean. He's been on the podcast before, Sean Davis, Doc. And I reached out to him, and I was just talking to him about it. He's like, "Look, I'm going to be honest. I can't watch you go through this." He's like, "I cannot watch you be alone, right? And I'm going to buy you a ticket." to wherever the fuck you want to go, as long as you pay me back. Because I explained to him, I was like, I can't pay for it right now. He was like, why don't you just fly? Why don't you just fly out? And I was like, well, I don't have the money to. This was like a week after I'd been by myself. And he was like, I can't watch you do this. I'm going to pay for a flight for you to go wherever you want to go. You just tell me where you want to go. So I chose to go home to my dad. But before then, I reached out to a ton of different people, and I had my thoughts as to what happened, but we're not going to really dive into what happened. Maybe a little bit later on. But I was in complete psychosis, right? And I was begging, fucking begging, whatever higher power was there, was begging them to just stop this, like stop the pain, stop the heartache. I never once thought of suicide, but I just fucking wanted the pain to be over because it was just so unbearable, and it didn't happen. And I know why it didn't happen now, but in the moment I was like, "Fuck you!" Every one of you that's up there that I may believe in or have an idea that you exist. Fuck all you, because you put me in this situation. When in reality, I was in this situation long before I even knew it. And it just really hurt. And the community I had built up there, not the one on social media, but the community I had built up in Alaska, uh, they didn't help. And I'm going to say that. They didn't help. Not one bit. When I asked for help financially, they said, sorry, we can't help you. Even being a graduate of the program, sorry, we can't help you. Okay. When when I asked to be moved out of my house because I had no access to the outside world, they offered to put me up in a building. And when I tried to contact them about going to said building, they didn't respond. People that could have come on base to come and get me didn't. There was one person um, that is the ace for me, and that is Chris Hansen. Chris Hansen saved me when I couldn't save myself. He helped get me out of my house, even for a few hours, because I didn't have no food on the table. I had nothing that was of substance. And he reached out to me and he said, if you can make it to one of the gates to go out, and I will meet you and I'll take you to lunch and I'll just take you out for a little bit so that you aren't staring at the four walls. And I'm so goddamn grateful for him. Like, he didn't have to do it at all. He could have said that's not my goddamn problem, but he didn't. And he championed me. He put me on his fucking back. And I'm so goddamn grateful for him every second. And he helped get me to the airport to fly out. So when I was at the airport, um, I was talking to my at the time wife. I said, you know, we had a few communications back and forth, and I said, if you just say the word, I'm not going to go through with this. I won't fly home, right? Because I was planning to fly home for a month and then come back. And she said, go home. You need it, and I'll be in contact with you. And I said, okay, and I left. And I didn't want to, man. Like, I sat at the gate and I cried. I said, I don't want to fucking go home. I flew to Denver. Did not want to go home. Sat in the airport crying. I got to Dulles, which is in Washington D.C. My dad came to pick me up, and he's like, "You don't look happy to see me." I was like, "Dad, I don't fucking want to be here, so at all. I don't want to be here. I want to be back home." To me, Alaska was still home. And when I got home, you know, um, I didn't get any downtime to grieve it. Every time I went to go grieve at my dad, if you've seen some of the TikTok videos, if you follow me on TikTok or whatever, you've seen some of the joking videos that him and I had, piece of shit dad stuff. But in reality, what was happening off the camera was every time I would go to grieve, I'd be told suck the fuck up, which is the absolute wrong answer. Absolute wrong fucking answer. And he would compare his trauma to mine, and he would try to invalidate my trauma because he handled it differently, and I'm his blood, and I should be handling it differently. And he would say, "She's not fucking grieving you. Why are you grieving her?" And it's like, because this is fucking traumatic. This is hard to handle. Because you choose to go to a substance after a breakup doesn't mean that I do. And I have to feel it. I have to feel every goddamn moment of it. And then I had this like spiritual breakthrough, like a spiritual experience. And I pretty much realized that I could never go back. Could not. And in that moment, it was so freeing. And the next time she called, I said, "I'm never coming back, ever. If you want this to work, you need to come to me. And if you don't, I don't care." And she said, "I'm not coming." And I said, "Fine, it's over." I drafted up divorce paperwork, and later that year, we were divorced. And I'm grateful. In that time, I went on some dating apps because I needed human interaction. Like I just needed it. Like I wasn't getting out. My dad lived out in the country, like in the mountains, and I wasn't getting any human interaction whatsoever. Like we would go, yeah, I would DD for him if he would get drunk, um, or I would, go out to a bar and grill and watch him get fucked up, and I ate wings and talked to the bartender, and that's not a life to live, right? Being secluded from everybody because you're in a situation where you can't get out of it is not okay. So I got on some dating apps and started talking to some people of the female persuasion, and I met somebody. I'm not going to mention her name on here, but I met somebody, and she presented well, and I asked all the questions that I felt were right. I asked what she did for work. I asked, I didn't ask how much she made. I just, asked about the kid, everything. And the one thing that attracted me to her was she said she was in counseling. So to me, in my brain, that's like she's working on herself. And so that really attracted me to her. And I said, okay, she's in counseling. She's working on herself. Like, that's awesome because I didn't have that in my last relationship. My ex wife didn't didn't get into counseling, like one-on-one counseling at all. And so this woman is. And but I informed her, I said, look, I got my own money. I'm working on my own place. I don't have a car. I just moved here. I've been here less than 2 weeks. Sorry, less than like 2 months. And she said, no problem. I'd like to take you out to dinner. Okay. So she drove out to my dad's house. She worked in Frederick, Maryland, which was about 45 minutes from my dad's house. After work, she drove to my dad's house to pick me up, and we went to dinner. And it was a good time. We had a great time. Um, we talked, conversated. We went back to her place to watch a movie, and then I went home the next day. And we progressively talked more and more. And we, she'd come pick me up on the weekend, on Friday, and I come back on Saturday. Eventually, it would be like coming back on Sunday. And this is when she didn't have her kid, so I was not involved in the kid's life at that point, um, and another kid's life because at that point, like two relationships, I had been involved in a kid's life, and it ended really bad. And so the relationship started to escalate quickly, and I mean relationship like friendship. It wasn't even friendship. The relationship started to escalate quickly to the point where like 2 months in, I was meeting her daughter, and then 3 months in, I was meeting her mom that lived in North Carolina in the Outer Banks. And I thought everybody was great, but there was like lingering issues that I would see, and I was told I was the problem. And this is the most recent relationship. I was told I was the problem in all of it. The first argument that we had, or disagreement we had, was we went out to this bar right down the street from where she lives, and they serve food. And we went there primarily for the focus of getting food, but she brought some of her friends. And something happened that day. I cannot remember what happened that day, but something happened that day where I was I was in a real deep depression at that time. And we got to dinner. I was quiet when she came to pick me up, and I was quiet when we got to dinner. And I was withdrawn, just trying to process my own shit. And we got to the car to leave, and she said, "You embarrassed me in front of my friends." And I said, "What do you mean?" She was like, "You were quiet. You were withdrawn. You act like you want to be didn't want to be there." I said, "Look, I have some stuff going on, and I told you about it. Right? Like it's nothing that I hid from you. I've got shit going on mentally, and I was trying to process through it." And she said, "I wish you just would have stayed home if that was the case." And it's like that's fucked up. That's real fucked up because you don't know if that situation could have taken me out of the funk, but instead, instead of showing empathy and compassion and understanding, like she went the complete opposite direction and gaslit me into believing like I was the goddamn problem. And so she would make me apologize for it. And that started a perpetual 2 years of continuous shit. In that relationship, I have done some things wrong. I didn't go out of my way to make her life hell, but I did some things wrong. I'll admit it. And right here, right now, I'll say one of those was I lied. I lied about a vacation that we were going to go on. She told me to plan a vacation. I didn't want to go on this vacation at all. I didn't want to go on any vacation. I wanted to relax. I wanted to be calm because at the time I was living with her in her apartment that she signed for, and I did all the work in the house. I took care of her daughter when she wasn't there or when she wasn't with the babysitter. I was taking care of. I was helping her board dogs, so I was watching dogs while she was going at work, and I was doing housework, and it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot going from the relationship where I was everything to everybody to now I'm everything to everybody again. And when she needed something, I was there. If she wanted something, I was there, meaning I was dropping it off to her at work. I'm dropping everything I do, just to go get it taken care of. She needed oil change in the car. Boom, no problem. I got it. And So she asked me to go on a vacation or to plan a vacation. I would say, yeah, 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 I got it, I got it, got it. Meanwhile, I'm trying to save up money for this vacation because at that point she's putting it on me, all of it. And I couldn't save because of the lifestyle that she was choosing to live, going out to going out to dinner all the time, going to these events all the time. I couldn't save up money. And I kept saying, yeah, 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 I'll figure it out, I'll get it out, I'll get it taken care of. But I lied, and I'll be the first to say that I did. And then when it came time, I was like, "Man, I haven't been able to save up money, and we're not gonna go on a vacation, but I do have an alternative thing, and that's, let's go to your sister's house. Your sister lives in North Carolina. You complain that you don't get to see her as much, so let's go do that. We won't spend nearly the amount of money that we would have on a vacation, and that way we can save up, for the future." And yeah, I lied. And I'm not downplaying that whatsoever. I'm taking accountability and responsibility for it, and I took accountability and responsibility for it at that time. It's shitty, I know, but that's the only goddamn thing I did wrong in the relationship, and I'm taking full accountability and responsibility of that. That's the only thing I did wrong in that relationship, and every time, I got to this point where when we would disagree about things, I would try to defend myself. And I would try to say, "Hey, look, the way I'm being treated is not okay." And then she would say, "Well, you are not okay. You need to be medicated." And I I started to believe her, and I did. I eventually believed her, and I scheduled an appointment for a psychiatrist so I could get medicated. And the meds were side effects were so much worse than the actual like treatment of what it was doing for me. And in that time, I was called every ist or ism in the book. If I didn't agree with a position that she had in her life, she would call me narcissist. Um, I was sexist. You fucking name it. All the trigger words, all the buzzwords. That's what I was. I've been called racist for who I support. For presidential candidate. Uh, fuck, you name it. And it became uncomfortable to even live. So on the tail end of 2023, I got really serious about trying to get in a home and trying to find a space that I could call my own and build a family in, because an apartment is not one of them. It's a duplex, right? But it was not it. That was not the end goal for me. And even where I'm at now, it's not the end goal for me. So I started doing some serious hunting on how I could do this. And, I'd filed disability claims, social security claims, because I was not getting gainful employment. I had applied fucking everywhere. I just could not get gainful employment to save my life. So I continued to fight this fight with social security. And I finally ended up with a hearing in front of a judge, well, over the phone. And I was granted um, disability through them. So, I am on SSDI. And with that, I got back pay. So I was able to clear up my credit in order to get put in a home. And so when we went home shopping, and I mean, we meant her and I, when we went home shopping, uh, we looked at different homes. That's what she wanted, not what I wanted. And so we looked in some spots in Hagerstown, Maryland, and nothing stuck out to us. We ended up looking at a spot here, which is 5 minutes from her family's farm. And this was it. When she walked into this house and she seen everything, her eyes lit up. And I called my realtor and I said, "This is it. I want you to start working on paperwork, a proposal." So we ended up pushing a proposal in April, and we moved in May, or sorry, June. And I packed up my goddamn that apartment by myself, and I destroyed my body, and I got zero appreciation for it. That whole relationship, I got zero appreciation for who I was. I spoke to her about my love language, about how it's, words of affirmation, and she fucking wouldn't do it. And I had to fish for the compliments. Whereas she said mine is physical touch, and I did everything in my power to provide that. Sometimes like I was not physically capable to, but I tried so goddamn hard to make it work, to make her feel loved, and it was just never enough. And so I wasn't getting these words of affirmation. And the more that I did, the more that it just fucking did not come. So we ended up moving into this house. When I packed up the apartment, or the duplex, all the boxes and stuff, and helped everybody move all the stuff. And I said, I'm not moving the shit in my house, because I did all the goddamn work of 10 fucking men by myself. I'm not doing this. Other people can help me. And that's the first time that I advocated for myself. And I said, I'm not fucking doing this. So, her family and her side of the family came and helped move all the stuff in, and some of her friends and shit. Because I don't have anybody. I mean, I got my sister, but my sisters are working. I don't really have anybody else that's there. Me and my dad aren't talking. And that's something I'm going to go into here in a second. So, everything gets moved in, everything's fine. And when we start to settle in, she says, I don't feel safe in this house. And I said, what do you mean? And she was like, I have a feeling you're going to kick me out. I was like, well, if you put that on the universe, right, like it's going to happen, right? Don't put that out in the universe. Stop thinking of that negative thought pattern, and on the side, treat me a little fucking better, and this won't happen. And so yeah, I didn't get treated better. Actually, I got treated worse. I got treated worse. I became a slave in my own home. Um, there were so many times where um, I was unappreciated and I was taken advantage of, and there was no gratitude shown. And arguments happened that didn't need to happen. Um, there's been so many instances in this house, in the short year that I've lived in this house, that they have gone awry. Um, you know, we took a trip to Nashville to go see my daughter, and around Thanksgiving last year, we had a great time. We went to Country Music Hall of Fame. We went to go see Moana 2, and then after the weekend was over, we drove away. And as we were leaving, Um, I'm sitting there and I'm tearing up because I'm losing my kid, right? Not losing my kid, but I'm driving away from my kid again. It's a big wound for me. And she says, why are you crying? It's not that big of a deal. Like, you get your kid 24 fucking 7, and you have the option to send your daughter to her grandparents. You have the option to allow her dad to see her. I don't have any of those options. It hurts. Let me feel this. She just wouldn't. And finally, I said, I don't want to talk to you for the rest of this ride. And I didn't. She asked for empathy and compassion, but she would not show me the same. And the straw that broke the camel's back for me, the beginning of the end, was Christmas. We had my parent, or my mom and my brother, and we had my daughter and her family here. And my, at the time, girlfriend made everything about her, and she controlled everything. If I spent money, she bitched about it. Um, if I transferred money out of my savings so I could spend money on my daughter, that was my money, she'd complain about it. Even though we had enough money in the bank to survive and then thrive, like we're not hurting for money. And so we one of the big arguments that really broke the camel's back was just I was here with my daughter, and I told her, I said, look, you're on vacation right now, kid. She's 12 years old. Well, now she's 13, but she was 12 at the time. I said, you're on vacation. You do a lot when you're at your house. You don't lift a finger here unless you create a mess. If you create a mess, you clean it up. But you don't lift a finger here. You don't clean anybody else's mess. You do your own. She said, okay. And as soon as I said that, my, at the time, girlfriend walks through the door and goes into this rage and goes completely unhinged and wants to clean her daughter's room. But she's telling my daughter to clean her daughter's room, even though my daughter didn't have anything to do with the mess. My daughter doesn't do well under pressure. She doesn't do well with conflict at all. So she folded. She went in there, and if my daughter's going in there, I'm going in there. And I told my ex, or my, at the time, girlfriend, I don't want my kid cleaning your kid's room because your kid made the mess. She's 7 years old. She should know how to clean her room, but you're choosing to cater to her, and you're choosing not to teach her lessons that I have tried to teach her. She's going to listen to you more before she listens to me. And instead of coming in, instead of being in there and showing gratitude that I'm taking time away from my kid, or my kid is taking away time away from me to help her out, she barked orders, continued to bark orders. So I stepped out and I said, I can't do this. We're not having this conversation here. I sat on the couch, and she walked out of the room and started yelling at me. And like, I'm trying to keep my cool, trying to keep my calm. I said, you're going to do this in front of my kid while I'm with my daughter all my time. And instead of stopping, she shut the door and continued on. And finally, I left. I went outside and I said, I need some fucking air. I need to get away from this because this is really triggering me. And I walked outside so I can get on the deck and I can just like breathe. And I turn around and she's behind me. And I just let it loose. I let it go. I let it all go. And so I said some things that I'm not proud of. Period. I didn't create that. I didn't start that mess. She did. And when I was outside trying to decompress, she walked back inside. She walks out with my daughter. I tell my daughter to come here, and she says, "No, I'm going to mom." I said, "What are you doing?" And at the time girlfriend said, "I'm protecting her from you." Like, I wasn't violent. I was angry. I was upset, but she turned it into an absolute victim, a stance of victimhood, because she created a fucking a problem instead of respecting my wishes as her father, and made it about her, and made it about her, what she wanted instead of what my daughter and I wanted. And that created this upheaval. Like, literally told my daughter's mom that she didn't want my daughter to spend the night here but then turns around and allows other children to spend the night here at the same goddamn time. Like, that kind of bullshit is what fucked my head up. So, I got a whopping 12 hours with my kid over a week's span, a whopping 12 hours. And that fucked me up because that was supposed to be the first impression of what it would look like to come here over a summer. And if that's a first impression of what it would look like to be over here during the summer, her mom would not let that shit happen whatsoever. And so I started trying to repair that bridge, not with my at the time girlfriend, but with my daughter's mom and my daughter and her stepdad. And it just was at a standstill. I mean, there was nothing, no progression, no healing, no nothing. And I understand why. And so, one of my friends, friend of the channel, Rusty Diamond, Rusty fell in some hard times, and he messaged me and told me. And I'm the type of person I can't see my friends or family members, you know, put in a situation where they cannot win and they're suffering. And so I offered a room to Rusty because I have the spare room to do so. I have the space for Rusty to come in and stay. And he took it up. He took the offer up, and he came in. Granted, Rusty, he makes his own money. He has his own car. He pays his own bills. I can help him get back on his feet, at least, where he doesn't have to pay rent for a little bit. Just put money in, put food in groceries. And he has. And so he came, on the back end of February. And when I presented this to my the time girlfriend, she said, 2 to 3 weeks. Well, first off, my name's on the fucking lease. It's my house, my rules. And I said, all right, whatever. But I wasn't gonna let that happen. I'm not kicking my friend out and putting him on his ass because he's not on his feet yet. Like, just gotta give it time, right? Nobody gets on their feet in 2 to 3 weeks at all. And so that was the goal. And I told her that was the goal. Like, get him on his feet. And then when he's ready to go and he's ready to be released, he can go. And she didn't agree to that. 2 to 3 weeks, 2 3 weeks, 2 3 weeks. Sure, you say so. So the 3 weeks comes, 4 weeks comes, and she's like, "Oh, what the fuck?" Blah 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 blah, and she starts like grinding my shit, like jumping in my shit, and I stood my ground. And then the Friday before I broke it off, Rusty and I were sitting out here in the living room. He was working with a client, mind you. Rusty's a hypnotist. He does holistic healing, as I do, and Rusty um, has had some book had he wrote a book on how good hypnosis is, and then he wrote a book about erotic hypnosis and how it can benefit people with sexual trauma, with sexual healing, stuff like that. And so he wrote that, and he's working with some clients, but he would always work with the clients or work on the book when my ex's daughter was not here, like, i.e., when she was in school. And when she was here, even when she was sleeping, he didn't touch it. He didn't mess with it because he understands what it looks like, and he understands. He was very transparent about it too. He told me, he told my at the time girlfriend, he told even her mom. And there was no issue with it whatsoever. They're like, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool." Nobody vocalized any issues with it whatsoever. And so, um, this month goes by, but that Friday before, Rusty and I are sitting here, and Rusty's working with a client on the computer, just typing back and forth, whatever. And her dad walks in, drunk as a skunk. Drove to my house, drunk as a skunk. Walks into the house. Hey, come and help me with these plans. Okay. So I go out there, and he's like barking orders at Rusty. And Rusty's like, "No, man, I'm not coming out there to help you because that's not my thing, and I'm working right now." And instead of like letting it go, her dad walks in, tries to grab Rusty's computer and his phone, and like tries to fight him. And I haven't been in an aggressive situation like that in a while. And I looked at him and I said, "You need to get the fuck out of my house." Like, he violated boundaries, right? Like, the boundaries I set was like, I don't care if you come into my house, and if you are drunk or you have been drinking or you are drinking, I don't as long as you're not driving. And if you're driving, that's wrong. Um, because I have a DUI under my belt. He does too. That's crazy, right? You would think that he would learn. He did. Um, but don't come into my house starting bullshit while you're intoxicated or in here whatsoever because you're disrespecting not only my house but my space, and I'm not okay with that. So I told him he needed to leave, and I told her that your dad's no longer welcome in my house if he is drinking. Like that's an absolute. He broke that boundary. He disrespected my space. He's no longer allowed. And so she went outside. She came back in, and like instead of apologizing for her dad's actions or like whatever, she was like, "Oh, that's what you get when you have a redneck father." And I absolutely lost it. I said, "He's not a redneck, dude. Not at all." And I said, "There's a level of human decency that rednecks have that your dad didn't display and that you weren't displaying whatsoever." And so, at that time, I noticed how much of an enabler she was. And like look back at all the situations that I have been a part of, and so I didn't address it again, and I let it simmer over the weekend. And Mondays were usually our day to go shopping, like grocery shopping and stuff like that. So we go out grocery shopping, and I had a friend hit me up and asked me if they could borrow some money. It was like a day, literally a day before payday. And it was like $200, and I was like, "Yeah, man, let me talk to my at the time girlfriend." He was like, "Yeah." So I talked to her. She ran me down, and I got really angry because like I had lent this dude money before, and he had always paid me back in time. Never quit, and I never had an issue with him. And she made it an issue. She made it a big issue, and then she said, "You need to stop being so fucking nice to people." And at that point, that was an attack on my character because that's who I am. I'm fucking nice to everybody that I encounter whatsoever. Till you make it so that I cannot be nice, and I lost it. And I kind of got really upset, and she just perpetuated this fire. And I got home and unpacked everything. And Rusty said, "Do you want to go on a walk?" And I said, "Sure." So while I'm going on this walk, Rusty's like, "I want to read you this letter I wrote." I was like, "Okay." So he reads me this letter that is to me, and it's everything that he observes in the house and how it's impacted him and how he realizes it impacts me. And he got to this point where he said, "You are not thriving, you are functioning, and you are surviving." And that broke me because I thought that I was out of survival mode, but I wasn't. And the absolute truth fucked me up. But it's not a truth I haven't heard before. I had friends that would come to me and say, "Hey, look, uh, what is happening in your home is not right." Friends, family that have been here and have seen the things that have happened. They said this is not right. You're being treated less than human, and she is thriving off of what you've built. She's not giving you anything in return. I said, "All right." So I sat there and I cried. There's a park down the road, and I sat there on one of the benches and I just cried because like it, I realized yet again another relationship that I thought was thriving was not, and was going to come to an end by my hand. And so I said, "Okay, I'm going to give myself time to calm down and be logical and uh, be able to cope with this. And tomorrow I'm going to talk to her and just going to tell her it's over. I'm going to give her a time frame, and then we'll work from there." I got home from that walk, and I wasn't even 2 minutes in the door, and she already started. And she started in on me. "Did you talk to Rusty about time frame?" I said, "Him and I talked, but we're working out a few things." "What the fuck does that mean?" "Don't worry about it." She kept going in on me, and then she turned her focus to Rusty. Like in my house and my rules, if I don't have a problem if you have an issue with me and you take it up with me, but if you got an issue with my guest and he hasn't done anything and you start in on him because you are completely incapable of being tactful and respectful, that's where I have the issue. And she became completely disrespectful, started cussing at him, and he returned it, but he called her an unsavory name. I'm not gonna say it on here, but he called her an unsavory name. And then she looked at me and she said, "Are you gonna allow him to talk to me like that?" And I said, "Absolutely, because you created this mess. You're gonna clean it up." If she would have kept the conversation between her and I, nothing would have happened. But she opened up that door and she created that mess, so she needed to clean it up. Eventually, we would break up that day. And over the next week, she would start to move her stuff out. I would leave the house so that she would be able to get her stuff out and I wouldn't be in the way. Um, and I asked her on that last day, "Hey, are you done?" She said, "Yes." Okay, I need my key back. So in the state of Maryland, once you move all your stuff out of the house willingly, and once you hand over that key, you are no longer a resident of that house. And so she handed me the key. That means she's no longer the resident of the house. Now she would come to the house, she would start running her mouth, and she would walk in my door, literally open the door, walk in. That's trespassing. And I would say, nobody wants you here. Why are you here? Right? Please stop. There's a reason I broke up with you, and that is because I don't want you in my space. I want to be left alone. I want to heal from this, and you're not giving me the opportunity to. And many, many things happened in that time. Many insulting words, many insulting actions happened in that time, and it's too much to go into. One of the things that happened is she tried to ruin the relationship between my daughter and my daughter's mother and I. And so I bought a truck. I bought a 2016 Nissan Titan. It is an absolute animal of a vehicle. Um, that is the vehicle that I wanted. I went and bought a vehicle. And it was important to me to buy it because not only was it going to help me to be able to go back and forth, but it was also going to be able to give me the opportunity to help people move their stuff or move out of bad situations. And I had a friend named Lauren, and she's in the healing group. Uh, and she asked me if I could help her, and I said, "Yeah, I got the truck for a reason." So went over to her house. Now she used to live in this like really tight spot, right? Like the driveway was really tight, so there wasn't a lot of maneuverability in there. And I had packed up the trunk or the bed of the truck, and I went to maneuver out, and I hit a bush, and I went to back up, and when I did, the wheel well pretty much caught the back patio, and it dented it. And so my ex comes over to my house to charge, like and this time she bought an $80,000 car, and that was a choice. She put a power bank on it as an electric vehicle. She would charge at the house because her daughter's father wasn't able to take it off at the time. And so she would come over the house, but then she looked at the truck and she FaceTimed my daughter's mom and said, "Look what Sean did. He wrecked his fucking vehicle." What? Squeeze me? So that happened. And then she would go on to say that she was watching my bank accounts and that I was going on certain adult websites. Yeah, sure. I have needs as a man. Uh, but it was all legal, not immoral. There's no issue with it. And then she said, I went to a dispensary and I bought some weed and I my broke my sobriety. Here's the thing, guys. My brain and my opinion of marijuana has changed. If it's done, it's it's a substance that can help human beings, and it's helped a lot of people with anxiety, depression. It's helped people eat. It's helped people to become more social. And I'm not saying that as a place of like go get high and then do these things. I mean, for me, I use it as a form of healing. I don't do it to get high. I do it to alleviate the pain. I talked to my psychiatrist and I told her I'm not taking your poison anymore because the side effects of the pills are far worse than the healing aspect of it. I said, I'm not taking your poison no more, but this is what I want to do. I said, we can't endorse it, but if it helps you, do it. Right. I said, okay, cool. Awesome. And so I would take a hit off of a pen and it would alleviate the pain in my brain because when you get off of SSRIs, it's like you got 1,000 spark plugs in your brain all over the place. And so it alleviated the pain. I don't smoke regularly. I really only smoke when I'm in immense amount of pain, and that's it. And that's all I need, right? And it's a medicine, much like growing plants and using plant-based medicine is a it's a medicine, and I use it as such. Don't drive high. Actually, as a matter of fact, don't smoke to get high. I smoke to alleviate the pain, and it helps. I know that it has a negative connotation on it, but it also falls under MAT, medically assisted treatment. So there's that. I'm open and transparent about my recovery, and you can take it as you will, but my recovery journey is my own. I don't use any illicit drugs, none of that shit. I've actually gone more toward a holistic healing lifestyle, a holistic lifestyle, but that's later on to talk about. But she spread all of these fucking accusations, or she spread the truth and tried to spin it to make it look bad and make me look like I'm an incapable father, make like I'm an incapable human being. And that set me off because I've worked really goddamn hard to establish a co-parenting relationship with my daughter's mother and her stepdad. In turn, being able to be the father that I need to be or can be with my daughter. She impeded on that. She tried to make me look at like absolute dog shit and doesn't take accountability or responsibility for it. And that's fine. So I had to go clear that rumor up and clear everything up like that with her mom. And over the past month, I've hung out with them a lot, like my daughter's mom and stepdad. But anyways, um, then on Easter Sunday, she sent her baby dad over here to take the power box off the house. That's fine, whatever. I didn't have a problem with that. But I met him outside, and we were talking. And I said, "Hey, look, I'm sorry that I can't be a part of your daughter's life. I would love to still be a part of her life. I miss her so much, right? Like she's a part of my life for 2 years at this point. But I can't handle her mom. Her mom is the one of the worst people I've ever encountered in my life." And he said, "Well, I'm just going to tell you, like, I was sent over here to create a problem for you." And I said, "What do you mean?" He was like, she asked me to come over here and create havoc for you." And I said, "What? Why would you do that?" Like, I didn't get offended, but it was more of a question to him. Why would you do that? Right? Like, I said, if I call the cops, you're getting in trouble, not her. Then that looks bad on you, and then you lose time with your daughter. And then that is another reason that she can tack onto you if she decides to go back to court as you're an unstable father. You gotta think about it. And he said, "Oh my God, I've been manipulated." Yes, you have. Yes, you have. And that's how it was my relationship. And she did that to him. And who else knows before then? But that's not my problem anymore. So because of that, I decided to go file for a protective order because she's willing to send somebody over my house to create bullshit while he's supposed to be here to do something else. What else is she willing to do? Like she was willing to walk into my own home. What is she willing to do? So I filed a protective order. And the judge, and there were some sexually explicit messages that she had sent to me. And I felt really harassed by him. And I said that in court. And I said, I felt sexually harassed. And she said, that's not harassment. I said, excuse me. Like if I was a woman, that would be harassment. And I would be fucking arrested right now. But it's not harassment because she's a woman. Okay. I said that in court. I said, if I was a woman, this would be different. She didn't disagree. So I got a temporary protective order in the state of Maryland. You get a temporary protective order, and then that order goes into effect after the final hearing. And so, like the final hearing would have been a week later to instill the permanent one. And so, in this time, I'm like, okay, she's going to be at court. I just got to keep my composure. Um, it's going to be fine. And then I got a call from her. She lawyered up on a civil case, which tells me like she's really guilty. She felt like she was going to be guilty. She felt like she was going to get in trouble. And so her lawyer calls me and is like, "What do you want on my client?" I said, "Dude, just like the same shit that I've been asking when I broke up. Just leave me alone. Don't come into my house." no contact. Like, I just want to live my life. That was all I've ever asked is I just want to live my life and be normal. And lawyer started, started in poking and prodding, and I got really upset. I'll lie. I lost all composure, and I, I said, I started diving down that rabbit hole, and then I started getting really triggered, and I tried to like vocalize that, like as a combat veteran with PTSD, this is triggering me. And as I started to say that, the lawyer jumped in and said, "Yeah, I like to. I hear you like to use that a lot," and that sent me over the edge. And I was like, "You know what? This conversation's over." And I hung up on her and I blocked her. And in that time, I was convinced, in between that Saturday night, so Sunday, Monday morning, I was convinced to make a deal with the lawyer from outside sources that I didn't need to bring the sword at all. I didn't have to nail it down, but the best judgment and the best course of action to keep everybody safe. And I don't mean everybody like her and I. I'm talking about her daughter and her daughter's father. Keep them safe by proposing a deal. And so I did. I said, just no contact. No, no contact, no trespassing, no nothing. Like, just leave me alone. In that time, uh, I was just going through it, and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna give this to the lawyer and see what the lawyer says. And I did, and the lawyer was good with it, and she was good with it, and everybody signed. And we showed up for court, and she brought 3 people to the courtroom to try and intimidate me, and then stood in front of the door that I had to go into as the victim, and to intimidate me. And I didn't even acknowledge their existence, and that was complete power and control. And I got in there, and the judge, said, "Okay, this is good." Boom, and we left. And so there was only one thing I wasn't able to get transferred out of the joint bank account at the time, just due to the fact that I missed a time window, and that was my Social Security, and that was helping me to pay bills and all this other stuff. And so I wake up. I was supposed to get paid that next Friday, and I wake up to transfer the money out, and all of it's gone. She had transferred it out into her own account and spent it at Disneyland, or yeah, she was going to Disney or Universal at the time. So that's that. And so currently the situation I'm in is I'm trying to figure out why the Social Security Administration or my local law enforcement haven't done anything about it. I filed reports. I gave her enough time to give me the money back, and she said no. And so I'm waiting on local law enforcement. I'm also waiting on Social Security to figure out why nothing has been done about this, because if I was a woman and this shit happened, I would be hammered to the wall. I would be in jail or prison, um, and it's unfair. It's absolutely unfair. So since that happened, I've kind of sheltered in place. I haven't gone hermit. I've been taking care of myself, but I've been diving a lot into my healing, uh, my personal healing, into the podcast. Started recording again. Um, 3 weeks ago, I went to Tennessee to Clarksville to go visit my daughter for a week because they are going to be stationed in Germany, and I got the pleasure of dropping them off at the Baltimore airport last night and spending the last 3 days with them. It's been hard, um, but the show is going to continue on. The projection of this show is going to continue on. I know I had contemplated not continuing on the show and just leaving it, but I looked back at some of the episodes that I hadn't posted yet, like some of the ones like Cheyenne. Cheyenne's first one, she was the very first one that I hadn't posted, and then a few of the ones afterwards. And I was like, these deserve a spot, so I started posting them. And then I looked and I said, "Oh, Cheyenne's story needs number two, so we got to do that, and we'll see what happens after that." And I started recording with Cheyenne, and I just absolutely fell in love with it again. I miss the connection. I miss hearing people's stories. I miss the motivation. I miss everything. I miss everything about it. So the show's not going anywhere. The show isn't changing directions. Actually, at the end of my week recording this week, so right now it's July 14th, and this is going to post probably September, October timeframe. At the end of this week, I'm going to have episode 107 recorded, and stepping back into it. and I'm putting my effort into it. I've got a sponsor that I'm working with, and sponsorship is going to be coming out there. And we have a few other nonprofits that we're going to be working with, and some Facebook communities that I'm going to be working with, and I'm going to be advertising on the channel. It's important to partner with people with like-minded organizations or pages, right? To push the word out to let people know that they're not alone. Now, the biggest thing that I ask of you in this moment, and I don't ask anything, and I don't care about the numbers, I don't care about the subscribers, but the only way for this thing to grow and the only way for these people's stories to get out there is if we share it and we subscribe and we comment, right? Because that helps me out to know what is working and what's not working. And up until this point, I don't know what's working. I've just been continuing to poke and plug. Some things stick, some things don't. But I need your help. I need your help to help this thing reach the next level and to like get to a point where where we can really start making an impact. There's some voices that I want to hear on this show, and a lot of those voices ask for the viewer count, ask for the sub count. I don't like that, but that's what's required for those voices. And so I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, commented, and shared this. It's important. Um, I'm never going to be about the numbers, but unfortunately, the only way to progress this thing and keep it going is through growth. And I've been stagnant for a long time. I'm grateful for everybody. I think right now we're sitting at 306 subscribers on YouTube, and I don't know how many on Spotify, but we're sitting at a pretty decent number on YouTube. And yep, 306 subscribers. I need your help. I need your fucking help. Please, please help me. This is the only time I've ever asked for help on this channel. Please help me out because the messages need to grow. The words need to be heard. I'm not asking to be a celebrity. I'm just asking for these people's stories to get out there. So thank you for sitting with me this hour and 17 minutes. Thank you for your devotion and sticking on this train. It's not going anywhere, and it's going to be consistent, and it's going to keep going. So until next time, I'm grateful for you. Be kind to yourself. Be gracious to yourself. Love yourself. You are loved. You are worthy. You are worth it. Have a nice